Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. Familiar with the name. Familiar with the name.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public. We're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Welcome to the beginning of July, the end of Pride Month. Today is Monday. It is July the 1st. A lot going on in the world. I hope most of you got a chance to disconnect from the garbage that is social media, from the garbage that is the news cycle, and enjoy a little bit of America. This is a great month. This is a great week. I want to let you know right up front, because I always forget to do this. During this week, I will be guest hosting the Dinesh D'Souza podcast, and we've got some really good guests. I think you guys are going to have a lot of fun with us. We've got Jonathan Cho from The Cho Show, which is an independent journalistic organization, and Jonathan is very funny, and he's very clever, and he's also very bold. You may have seen him if you follow me on social media. He was pushing some buttons over in Texas at the Texas Children's Medical Center. So check that out. That's going to be today. We've got Mike Howell from the Heritage Foundation is going to be joining us. I have Ryan Matta talking about a new documentary that he's putting out. And if you guys don't know about that, sounds like he's been doing some wild stuff. He told me something that I think you guys can get a kick out of. He said, if you're in California and you just so happen to be shooting up with heroin while doing something Jeffrey Toobin is known for doing, while butt naked in the middle of a handicapped parking spot while you're also defecating on the ground in front of a cop, you can do that. But if you accidentally park in that spot and you pay for the parking, but you don't have a handicap permit, then you will in fact get a $300 ticket. And I said, Ryan, I'm so sorry to hear about your parking troubles in California. It's not a good place. We're going to have a lot of fun doing some stuff like this. So I hope you guys join us. And then also one of my favorite guys, Ron Coleman from the Dillon Law Firm, is going to join me to talk about something Wednesday. Just before we go into 4th of July, we're going to be talking about something that I'm stealing from him. And it's called The Curse of Abundance. So join us on that. We go live in the afternoons. And I think you guys will get a kick out of that. Today's show is going to be a lot of fun because we're going to break down the hysteria. And I think there's a ton of people right now that are driving this narrative that Joe Biden is on the cutting block. They're about to axe the guy and they're going to go to plan B. I don't think that's possible. And I've been talking to folks that are fairly serious. It would be a terrible move for them, worse than the alternative. I think they're in the situation that those of us who have ever been to Fort Benning and jumped out of planes with the Army, it's kind of called hold what you got. The Democrat Party is going to be in for either a dynamic PLF, which is called, that's a parachute landing fall for those of you who have ever fallen off the back of a C-130. We're either coming to the dynamic PLF or we are coming to no election as we recognize it at all. And that may be just as likely, maybe even more likely. Before we get started with what we got going on today, we're going to push over and say a big thanks to our new sponsor. This is My Patriot Supply. And I just want to say, folks, you guys didn't like this last time, but millennials and Gen Z being more prepared is something that is difficult to grasp. It's something that the research seems to show that they're more prepared than other generations. That's the Gen Xers, which is kind of where I live, and the boomers. Their savings, their emergency stockpiles, all in better shape. That means that you have no excuse. If you are not preparing, you are getting ready to repair, and that is failing. Get started with My Patriot Supply since 2008. My Patriot Supply has helped millions of Americans gear up for emergencies, and you can do that too. Today, their 4-week emergency food kit is $50 off with free shipping. That's a great deal. Get yours at my website, which is preparelikekyle.com. Again, preparelikekyle.com. Each of these food kits offers over 2,000 calories for every single day. Plus, it comes in an ultra-durable 4-layer packaging, lasts up to 25 years. Just keep it out of direct sunlight. Order as many kits as you like. Again, $50 off with free shipping included. If younger people can figure it out, those of us who have a little bit more financial resources and know what the world looks like should be doing it too. Again, preparelikekyle.com. Preparelikekyle.com. It's so easy to remember that. It's a nice little redirect to their website, and you guys will get right in there. You can add right from that little landing page. All right, so in addition to Pride Month ending and the Biden kind of controversy, I also want to cover a couple of other topics, and we'll see those in just a second here. But the big meltdown. You guys ready? Here it is. These are the numbers, and they are undeniable. That's why people are getting rowdy. This is why people are getting sort of incensed and thinking that something is about to flip over. This is a CBS YouGov poll. It says increasing numbers of voters do not think that Biden should be running after that debate with Trump. And so the panic and the meltdown continues. There's a big problem with a lot of this stuff, folks. The problem is, if you polled Joe Biden, and we're going to get into the technicalities of it as well, because there are 50 different states, and each of those states is responsible for their own elections. Inside of those states are up to over 3,000 counties. I think it's like 3,300 counties, give or take, and all of them have to individually do this work. There are logistical hurdles to swapping the guy out. Also, there's some financial hurdles when it comes to where money was given and how it can be given. But these numbers are atrocious. And so what they did is they ran a poll in February of 2024, earlier this year, and 37% of registered voters is across the board thought Joe Biden was a good option to run. 63% said not, almost 2 out of 3. And that number has only shifted to the right. Now 28% of people think that he should run, almost 1 in 4, a little bit more than 1 in 4. And nearly 3 out of 4 think that he should not run, 72%. So that's the CBS piece here. This is what they are getting riled up about. Obviously, an absolutely disastrous performance. And we're going to lead with, this is Face the Nation doing their sort of mental breakdown and emotional shrieking about how could this happen. So here you go.
It is yet another extraordinary moment in the 2024 election cycle, with Democrats in a state of crisis after President Joe Biden delivered a disastrous debate performance that fueled voters' top concerns about his age and ability to serve another 4 years in office. Not since the first Nixon-Kennedy debate in 1960 has a debate had as much potential to shake up a presidential race. This morning, there is widespread panic within the Democratic Party and questions about whether the president should drop out of the race.
I think it was a disaster. I think it was like maybe the worst debate I've ever seen in my entire life.
I do think people feel like that we are confronting a crisis.
There were going to be discussion about whether he should continue.
At first it was shocking, then it was scary, then it was sad, and by the end it was absurd.
All right, so there they are. They're kind of laying out their big problem. So the question is what made this happen? And we have to break down whether or not we believe that Democrats actually don't know how Joe Biden operates, that they don't know that he's a feeble old man, that they can't see any of the clips. But we know they see those clips. We know that they see the images and the snapshots and the videos that we're seeing. Why? Because the White House press secretary went out and called them cheap fakes. She created an accidentally amusing word saying that this was not going on. But this has been going on since 2019, folks. This is nothing new. This is not a shocker to those who are in charge of the party. That's why he ran a basement campaign in 2020. That's why he just hung out and tried to have a referendum on Donald Trump. And that was quite easy because we had COVID, we had the Tiger King, we had Netflix, we had DoorDash or whatever you guys use, Instacart. People didn't go out of their houses. They did the same thing that Joe Biden did. They can't get rid of a Joe Biden because they're going to be tacitly admitting that he should have never been there in the first place. And the second real big problem is, and I think this is even bigger, if you pull Joe Biden out of the presidential race, you're also admitting that he has no business being president right now and probably never had any business being president. I don't think they can do that. You heard on that little montage, David Axelrod talking. We're going to play, or we're going to actually go over an article that he wrote, an opinion piece, which was essentially, they're stuck with him. That may be the worst situation, but it beats the alternative, the logistical problems, and all of the admissions that have to come out. So what are we going to see? You're going to see cover jobs from the White House and from the close allies who don't do a great job of it, folks. Like, let's be real. These people are terrible at their jobs, but they've got to cling to what they got. This is the dynamic PLF. This is hold what you got, airborne. You're about to go into the trees. So just put your arms out in front of your face and then hope that only your arms break. And if you haven't been to airborne school, that's essentially what falling out of the back of a plane is. It's a few seconds of panic and then a car impact with the ground. There's going to be a hard impact coming too. The question is whether it'll be with our election or whether or not people on the political left are going to have to deal with the inevitability of a Donald Trump. And it could go either way. Here we go. This is why the president was struggling.
Why was the president struggling?
I think the president had a tough night. I think all of us have difficult nights. Well, I think that the president had a difficult night, just like every single one of us do.
Every single one of us have rough nights, guys. You know, think about it. Sometimes you get up, you have to pee, and you didn't sleep, or there's noise outside, or when your neighbor's is having a party, or maybe it's 4th of July, or maybe it's not 4th of July, people are shooting fireworks anyway. You know, it's just a tough night. It could happen to anybody. It could happen to a guy that took a whole week off to prepare for something and came out radically unprepared. Like I said, the double down crowd are the ones to watch. People like Jim Clyburn, they're just going to excuse this. The fact of the matter is that our news cycle is short and we're going to maintain this and other people are going to move on. The question, I think, is do people in the middle that actually might vote? And those are two different sets of people in the middle and the people in the middle that might vote, because there's plenty of people in the middle that have just said, not interested. That is why I'm not interested in trying to cater to any MAGA crowds. I just don't think that's where this election can be swung. Steve Friend refers to folks that are going to crawl over broken glass to vote for Donald Trump. Yeah, those are real. The question is, how about people that otherwise don't care and then they look up and go, that other guy's pretty bad. I don't think we can do that again. Or they look up and they realize, hey, what happened to my country? How come the ATF and the FBI are both gay? Which we'll play you in a minute. All right. So that's the thing. I think the movement. Here's Jim Clyburn kind of making the answer that we're going to just push past this and act like it didn't happen.
Congressman Clyburn, since you are there in Wisconsin and doing lots of events, tell me the truth. What are you hearing from people on the ground?
Almost total. And I'm saying almost because I have not heard a single person express anything negative. All they're saying to us is keep Joe Biden moving forward.
Yeah. So old people want to keep this old guy in. Most people aren't paying attention. The other thing that I always hone in on is the way that people say what they're saying. Jim Clyburn just used 150 words to say something he could have said in 8 words. We are going to keep Joe Biden. I don't even know how many words that was. Whatever. It's close. Right? They get really wordy when they try to do cover-ups. We've got some fun stuff because the fact checks might be the most illuminating piece of all of this debate that went on. The fact checks are the things that people go back and they try to rewrite history. So the fun piece is CNN is actually finding themselves in a position where they've got to carry water for Donald Trump. That might be a first. But we have to realize that CNN has to love a Donald Trump. That is unlimited ratings for them. And they fell off a cliff when Donald Trump went out of office. Maybe they know where their bread is buttered. That doesn't stop the people in print. You've just seen NBC. We've seen MSNBC. We're going to have a little bit from CBS. We're going to have a little bit from everybody. And the fact check from ABC is maybe some of the most delicious ridiculousness. So let's just throw that on the screen here, shall we? Here we go. Fact checking. This is the ABC article that I just couldn't get enough of because all I wanted to see was a little bit of both sides. I just wanted to see that they had some semblance that Biden was a disaster. This is not attributed to any particular author. You'll see here it's by ABC News. So this is an editorial piece. It says President Joe Biden, former President Donald Trump met for a showdown over policy and records, but not everything claimed by the candidates on stage was factual. So that sounds like an opening to a fair-minded piece. They're going to evaluate both people, right? Inflation rates, border crossing, January 6th, abortion, the stock market, cost of things, the Paris Climate Accord, so on and so forth. These are the sparrings. So this is the series of questions that they wanted to evaluate. Are more terrorists crossing the border into America? Did Biden actually inherit 9% inflation? Hunter Biden's laptop, crime and the border, and were there military conflicts during Donald Trump's term? I actually don't remember it being phrased in that specific way, but here we go. 9% inflation. Trump says this is Trump's claim. So look at this. Largely exaggerated, is actually Biden. But the way that it's phrased is because of the way that that they evaluated the actual thing. So the claim that they use is Trump's claim. Every single one of these is Trump's claim, by the way. That's the spoiler alert. All right. He inherited 9% inflation. No, he inherited no inflation, almost no inflation, and it stayed that way for 14 months, and then it blew up under his leadership. Fact check, begrudgingly, mostly true. When Biden was inaugurated, the year-on-year inflation was 1.4%, which is better than the goal that the Fed has of 2%. Okay, and then they go under Biden. It peaked at 9.1, blah, blah, blah. Of course, that's because Biden said that we got all that bad inflation from Trump. The other one, military conflicts. You're seeing it at the bottom of the screen here. We get a lot of credit from the military. There are no wars. There are so many other things. Everything was rocking good. This is Donald Trump's claim. It needs context. It's true, obviously, right? Relatively speaking, as much as anybody's going to say something true that broadly. But the fact check says need context. Why? Because none of them want to actually begrudgingly admit that Donald Trump was right about this thing and that Biden is a disaster. So you have this piece, Donald Trump didn't formally declare war against any foreign powers. So that's true. But he did authorize military action in Syria, in Iraq. By the way, we're still doing those things, whether you like it or not. Special operations forces are doing work in those areas. It's not being covered, nor should it be necessarily, but it is happening. They talk about the airstrike that killed Soleimani. I think that was a high five moment for people in America in general, especially anybody who had friends that were injured or killed by Iranian weapons. That's a no-brainer, but they're going to call that out. And then also says that 65 American troops were killed in action during Donald Trump's term. Many of those conflicts were inherited from the previous regimes, and those go all the way back to Bush. So it is what it is. There's also the claim about crime in the border. This one is actually really funny. The crime in the border is Trump's claim that we have a border that is the most dangerous place anywhere in the world, considered the most dangerous place anywhere in the world, and he opened it up. He's talking about the rapes and the killing of women that have made big headlines, so that's a good talking point for people on the political right. It's also worth bringing up for those who want to remember, hey, there are consequences to illegal immigration, and some of them include crime, and some of them include abortion, I think, based on, we don't have the data on it, but you just brought in millions of people, and we know from whistleblowers that they are being offered abortions because many of them are sexually abused and or raped and so on along the way. That's a big deal. They want to just gloss right over that. The fact check says that his claim that we have the most dangerous border in the world or most dangerous place in the world is false. That's probably true if you want to get really, really granular, right? But the best is the way that they debunk it. The reality is that there's no evidence that points to a significant surge in crime caused by the recent arrivals. Well, as we've covered here before, the reason that those crime statistics are weak and show violent crimes being down is because something like 26% of the country is not represented in those crime stats. And that comes directly from big city mayors not wanting to have their police departments released to the FBI and then have people throw those facts in their faces. And so they've been slowly tightening down the spigot on who releases crime stats. And Los Angeles is not in it. And Baltimore is not completely in there. New York is not in there at all. New York City is not. So when you degrade the quality of those statistics, you are going to continually get less and less crime reported. That doesn't mean that there's a difference on the actual criminal activity. And if you were to go and do a big aggregate, grabbing all those cities and putting them together, I'm confident you would see that crime is in fact up. But it's a good talking point, so they run it. The most fun thing for me was the Hunter Biden laptop piece, okay? And so you see it on the screen here, Hunter Biden's laptop. The claim is as follows. It's the same thing as the 51 intelligence. This is Trump again. Like I said, they only checked Trump. 51 intelligence agents said the laptop was Russian disinformation. That was a big point of contention in the first series of debates done in 2020, where you just had Joe Biden hide in and out. These 51 intelligence agents and officers, people who came from very high places, stepped out and said it had all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. But it wasn't. It was Hunter's laptop. It wasn't Russian. Okay, that's Donald Trump saying it. Now, we just heard Clyburn say 150 words when 8 or 6 or 5 would suffice. This is how long it takes for them to debunk Donald Trump's statement with the fact check. True, but it needs unpacking. This is the same as it needs context. It's wild how much they had to say at the presidential debate in 2020. He suggests the contents of the laptop and the hard drive, which had been dubbed the laptop from hell, blah, 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 were garbage and a Russian plant. Biden's claim came from These letters signed by the 51 retired intelligence officials who wrote that the timing has all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation. Those are the actual words being used. Of course, some of those people said that Biden mischaracterized them. We know why they wrote it. The campaign was involved in it. They did it specifically to throw shade on the legitimacy of whether or not those crimes and those behaviors that Hunter Biden was involved in were legit. That's what they did. It was a smear campaign. All it had to do was last past November. We've also seen polling saying up to almost 20% of people who voted for Biden would have changed their votes had they seen that information or thought that it was credible. That's a big deal. That is a game changer in an election that is so slim in margins. They keep going on and on. Then they talk about how the physical laptop, which was a MacBook Pro 13, was brought up in trial in Delaware, and they end it with an FBI agent answering the question, were you able to confirm that this was in fact Hunter Biden's laptop? And the FBI agent says, yes. That is a lot of words to simply say Donald Trump was correct. Isn't it? They bend over backwards to be able to do this stuff. And so that's why this thing is so funny to me. Here's a fact check from CNN, kind of an unlikely source, a video version of this, where they decided to go after the Biden claims, many of which were garbage. A lot of have to do with the fact that he's so old he doesn't know numbers. There are two things that destroy Joe Biden at this point: words and numbers, which are just more words, right? So speaking and walking seem like the two hardest things for Joe Biden in 2024. You know, kind of the thing that you do as a politician, you walk around and then you talk to people. Those are both his kryptonite. And then anything after 9 p.m. is just a disaster. So here's the unlikely heroes of fact checking coming in from CNN. They just have to, look, they're confronted with the truth. Good on them, at least, for recognizing it.
Some of them. He said he's the only president in a while who didn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world. Troops have, of course, died on his watch. He said he's put in a $15 per shot cap on insulin and Medicare. It's a $35 a month cap. He said it's a $200 cap on overall drug spending in Medicare. It's $2,000 a year. He said the border now has fewer crossings than when Trump was in office. That's generally not true. He said, or at least strongly suggested, unemployment was at 15% when he took office. It was actually 6.4. He said Trump wants to get rid of Social Security. Trump doesn't. He said billionaires pay 8.2% in taxes. It's much higher. He said Trump told Americans to inject bleach amid COVID. We know Trump made foolish comments about scientists studying disinfectant injection, but didn't frame it as advice to people. And Biden said the Border Patrol endorsed him. No, its union supported the border bill he supported, never endorsed him himself.
Yeah, so you can imagine the Border Patrol probably going like, wait, what? What do we do? There's all kinds of memes that were popping up on social media before I dipped off for the weekend. A lot of false things. We're this far away from CNN admitting that the good people on both sides of the Charlottesville debate was also a nonsensical claim. So good for them, especially that one about the bleach being injected, because that's been a talking point on the political left of people who are very, very dishonest and peddling, I would say, disinformation. They've got to know that's false. You can just listen to his words. He didn't say that. So good on CNN for being balanced on that. There's a lot more coverage of sort of debate and meta coverage of the debate, but also a really good piece, an op-ed in today's Loop that lets you know that the Catholic vote, which is one of the groups I'm working with on purpose, Catholics are the single biggest group of Christians, even though still a minority in this country, a massive amount of people that should have the same values. And I say should because there's plenty of weird Democrat Catholics that I don't understand how you do that. Those people, if motivated properly, could make a huge difference. Those are the folks that I think that are gettable and in the middle that generally try to vote and also agree with our values. So there's a lot of people in a lot of these churches that we'll go to, and you look around and you're like, how on earth do you have a Texas Democrat sticker on your car when the Democrats are all in for abortion? You guys can support my friends over at Catholic Vote. You can also check out the Loop. It's catholicvote.org/loop if you just want to read it, or go to the main page, catholicvote.org, and sign up for the Loop. You'll get a great email every single morning with good news and information. And I do say that it is good news. It is mostly structured not to be the fear porn and the amygdala popping stuff that you'll see in the mainstream. It's just a kind of a balanced take on what's going on. Catholic Vote is in it for faith, family, and freedom. And if you guys want to support them, which does support our show directly, catholicvote.org/give is a place that you guys can go. They're doing voter strategies. They are doing targeted movements to try to get people who actually vote to be out and vote and change the tide of this election. And the folks there are fantastic. They really are. They're good folks. And you guys can always see, we have a link in the description. Wherever you're watching, you're able to see Between the Lines, that little weekly podcast we do. It's about 8 to 12 minutes long. It's never that long. And you guys can enjoy just a good thought. We were right, by the way, on our predictions about the debate. I'm kind of proud of being able to hone in on it. Mostly because I keep this little pad. I know what these guys are all about, and that's how they're going to go back to the same drawing board. They're always going to end up going back to the drawing board because they think, I don't know what the evidence is, but the Democrats seem to think that racism is where it sells. That's it. We got one last little thing here, too. I'll just throw this on the screen because I put it on here. They talked about the issues with inflation, but specifically they also talked about those issues, which I wanted you to show. 65 troops in America, because it actually does pan back to something that is maybe the nastiest piece of what Biden said on the Biden fact check, which was talking about and trying to use the military as pawns. I think people are used to that. Good story coming out of Red State that we're going to cover on. Before we get to that, we're going to talk about this outrage. So again, we can't have balanced coverage without having the loonies. This one was quite good. This is a story saying the thing that outraged blacks and Palestinians. You know, people who are marginalized. And reliably, this is one of the other two opinion writers that I always find to be quite amusing. He is apparently a radio talk show host called The Dean Obadiah Show, and he's a former attorney. So he's very upset because his family is Palestinian in whatever ethnic background. And so Donald Trump turned Palestinian into a slur. You might not have caught that if you weren't paying attention because it would have made a lot of sense to you when he said it. But this is something that that Dean is very, very upset about. And you should also know that this could be used to peg against, again, go after racism if you got nothing else, because it seems to work for these folks. It's also very strange that these Pride Month protests all seem to have pro-Palestinian bends to them. I just saw whatever in our chat say queers for black Palestinians. That's a good little smoothie of it. It's always a smoothie of Marxism, isn't it? All right. So the problem is apparently that Donald Trump said that when looking at what was going on in Gaza, he would have stayed out of it and allowed Israel to quote unquote finish the job. That is very, very insulting for the huge American Palestinian contingency that is a big voting bloc. We don't know why. He goes on to talk about his father was a Palestinian immigrant to America. Yeah, why was that? Maybe because the area that they call Palestine or the Gaza Strip is garbage, and your father didn't want you to grow up in that, Dean. Just saying. So Trump said he smeared the heritage by saying Biden has become like a Palestinian. That's the direct quote. Has become like a Palestinian. Apparently, that is a slur. That is slurring and using something that they are very, very proud of and makes them very, very angry. He said the same thing about Chuck Schumer. Now he's Palestinian. Apparently, this is an anti-Semitic comment because Schumer is Jewish, but he's not Jewish enough because he doesn't support Israel enough. These are all things that go on in a diseased mind when you are just looking for outrage and you are digging as deeply as possible. Anybody who pays attention to Donald Trump knows he just says stuff, a lot of stuff. It's Ben Shapiro's comment that will be on his headstone. You know, here lies Donald Trump. He said a lot of stuff. Yeah. The other thing that apparently is very, very offensive because we have to tie all the races together. We have to tie all of the marginalized people into one sort of article. So the other one was a baseless comment, allegedly. It's hyperlinked. I didn't click that hyperlink. I actually clicked on the other ones that you guys will share in just a second. The baseless comment that during the debate, Donald Trump said migrants are coming into our nation and quote unquote taking black jobs. Are you outraged? Are you furious? How dare he say that there are black jobs? That's it. That was the entirety of it. And then they have to go on and they have to say from those three little words, they blew up an entire paragraph talking about how he has a documented history of anti-black remarks. He's defended white supremacists. I'm pretty sure that of the two of the guys standing there, only one of them was like really good buddies with members of the Klan, right? Donald Trump may have got the David Duke sort of endorsement, but he wasn't buddies like Joe Biden was, like a known bunch of segregationists. What a weird take. Now, the thing that they said is that immigration groups and think tanks have long studied the issue of people coming here. They always say immigrants. They don't say illegal immigrants because that's the bigger piece. But these immigrants came in and they, generally speaking, don't take jobs from the majority of Americans. They're not. They're not the ones taking the jobs. Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. So here it is. The fact check. The majority of Americans say that immigrants fill jobs that U.S. citizens don't want. So there you go. That's Pew Research coming from 2020. This is a push during Donald Trump's presidency. It was in June where they're just trying to say that, look, these people come in, whether they're documented or undocumented, whether they're legally living here or they're illegally, the jobs that they do are things that people across all ethnic groups and racial groups do not want to do, regardless of political party. That's what's going on. Well, maybe it's because they're able to drive those wages down because the cost of doing crappy jobs should be higher. When you have a working pool of people that are here illegally, and by the way, they get all kinds of fun stuff, don't they? They have access to emergency rooms for healthcare, which is the single most expensive way to go about doing healthcare. It is terrible. It's the reason why medical costs are so high. Certainly one of them is that people who have no ability to pay cannot be refused. So they're saying something that is true probably at the first order level, that people are not willing to do the crappy jobs, picking crops, as Nancy Pelosi likes to say, and some of the others. They don't want to do the jobs that are difficult and kind of suck to do. But shouldn't that just mean that those jobs pay higher? There was a reason why folks who did the job of sanitation engineer, garbage men who drove around and did jobs that people didn't want to do, they paid really well. Part of it was unions. Part of it was because it was a job that people didn't want. So if you wanted someone to go out and do it, especially people who are here legally and pay taxes, you've got to pay them a salary that's going to be commensurate with the job and the indignity of doing so. And there's a lot of jobs that involve indignity. Pumping out septic tanks. This is the entirety of what Mike Rowe was pointing out with his show Dirty Jobs. A lot of the dirty jobs, one, they're satisfying because they're physical. And two, they pay pretty well because people generally say, well, I don't want to do them. Okay, well, you can go make $16 an hour being a barista. Or you can go do some really hard work. Adam Carolla kind of talks about this before he was a big famous comedian, before he had the ability to kind of write his own checks wherever he went. He was a carpenter. He worked out and he was a framing carpenter. He was building houses and that paid pretty decent. And certainly it paid for him to be able to be up all night and do comedy. And then at some point he makes the transition. It turns out that there are a lot of jobs that people will do if the price is right. So here's kind of a fun little montage. This is a thought experiment that was done. And the question is always, the indignity of the job, can it be overcome with cash? So this was a little, goofy sort of inartful way of asking, would you pick cotton? And is there a certain amount of money that would get people moving to do jobs that they would otherwise not do? And so here's a little taste of it. That is not it. This is the taste of it. Sorry. That was Pride. We're going to do that in a second. It's even more gross.
Would you pick cotton for $350 an hour?
For $350 an hour? That's more than I make now. I wouldn't say no. Full time?
Full time.
$350 an hour? I mean, I can't say no to that.
So if I offered you the job, you would take it?
Why, you actually have a job for me?
So you would work for me?
For $350 an hour? Sure.
Okay, so white guy, black guy asking the questions. Guy walks around in a Walmart and he's talking to someone in his late 20s, early 30s. Guy's wearing a beanie, he's got a beard, hoodie on. Regular dude. That's kind of what we're getting from. He says, that's a lot more money if you're willing to offer me that job. Yeah. Would you take it? Yeah, I would. Okay. And all of you in the chat are agreeing to it. You would also work and pick cotton for $350 an hour. Here's the funny thing. Because Trump referred to them as black jobs, did he not? They could be anybody jobs if they paid enough, right? Here's a fun experiment on, it looks like a college campus. Same exact story. Another, the protagonist here who's asking the questions, the journalist or the TikTok creator, whatever, is a black guy. And he's going to ask white guys and black guys, hey, would you do this work? I noticed he didn't ask any women. Apparently women are not doing the manual job of picking cotton. But this one actually is very funny. And I just enjoyed the reaction to if the amount of money meets the job, yeah, people will show up. It turns out that's always been the case.
Would you pick cotton for $350 an hour?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. That's like, I mean, yeah.
I'm in the fields. Oh, yeah.
You in the fields?
I'm in the fields.
With your boys or just you?
Oh, nah. Anyone can come, bro.
Anyone can come?
If everyone gets $350, all my boys can come. I'm putting my boys on.
Oh, you putting everybody on?
Man, I'm in there, bro. Singing the songs, everything, bro.
Singing the songs?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, I mean, if you want to sing the song, you can sing the song. What song you about to sing, though?
Anyone, bro. Wait in the water. I don't know.
Oh.
It's hard to turn down.
It is hard to turn down. I mean,
short term, sure.
Short term, sure. Short term, sure.
That keeps me in shape. Keep me in shape.
Mm-hmm.
Money. I mean, I don't see why. $350 an hour for anything is great.
It's insane. You gonna be singing the drinking, follow the drinking gourd and everything? You gonna be singing that too?
Yeah, 100%.
100%. Okay.
Yeah, I'll do it for like a year or two.
A year or two?
Yeah,
okay.
I couldn't do that for my whole life.
Your whole life?
Would I pick cotton for $350? Yeah.
That would have made me feel like I was shaming my ancestors. they did that shit and they didn't make it out. So look at me turning around and doing that shit for $350. Like, yeah, not enough money.
Not enough. Okay.
Not at all.
Okay.
I appreciate that you guys also honed in on the funniest part of that, which he said, yeah, I'm out there and I'm singing the songs and everything. It wasn't even part of the question. He's like, yep, I'm singing slave songs if I'm picking cotton. Why? One, it would be kind of funny at this point, right? That's just the nature of it. But yeah, white guy, black guy, doesn't matter. You're out there doing something physical. If you're willing to pay a wage for something that is otherwise undesirable work, it turns out people will do it. The short-term thing is a little bit funny too. As one of you just pointed out in the chat, who's that? Whatever just said. $700,000 a year. Are you going to go pick cotton? Are there manual labor jobs that pay $700,000 a year? Probably not. But there are some really dangerous, difficult jobs that allow you to go out there and make serious money. And you guys can watch Mike Rowe stuff to see that. Doesn't matter whether you're welding underwater in the middle of crazy, hurricanes, or whether you're out doing cleaning of systems that nobody else wants to get involved in. The fact of the matter is that quote unquote black jobs, this sort of outrage, it's all about first order level thinking. If you don't realize that the reason that the lowest paid jobs are going to people that come here illegally, it's because you don't realize that they can get away with paying them less, and so they will. If you can pay people less, then you will. That's the nature of business. And if you bring people in here that will work and be able to do things, first of all, they have a lower standard expectation than Americans do. That's a big problem. And that's why we're not going to be bringing things like manufacturing jobs back in the same way. You're not going to be able to bring back manufacturing if people in America still are interested in getting cheap and easy. And that's why I keep talking about the legacy of COVID showed us. Americans, given the choice, they will stay home. They will do nothing. They will collect money from the government that comes from the government, that comes from them, that comes from the government. They will not think beyond that. And as long as there's Netflix to distract them and that food is going to get delivered to the door, people just stay in their houses, no matter how crappy those houses are. People in America are addicted to comfort. And that is the nature of why we're going to be talking to Ron on the Dinesh show on Wednesday. That curse of abundance is a real American problem. I think that is the legacy of the last couple of years, at least the exposing that we have a curse of abundance, and that the only way back from this is not going to be just a Donald Trump or even getting the right people in Congress. It's going to be getting the values that Americans understood, that working very, very hard. And I'm not talking to this audience most likely. Most of you probably have that instinct. But people in this country broadly are very, very comfortable, and they have the least amount to do. And so they will inconvenience their neighbors and they will destroy their own country simply to not have to go to work. Unlike some of us who thought that the answer was, what is the hardest thing possible? And can I do it? And those people, law enforcement, military, you guys know that, but also those of you who went out and found hard jobs. One of my buddies worked in the oil fields. It was critical work, not something he loved, but he was like, I need to challenge myself as a man. So there's a lot of money to be made in the oil fields, and it's hard work. When he would describe it to me, I kept sending him all my snivel gear, all the cold weather stuff I had in the military that I wasn't using. It was like, hey man, I got some extra thick wool socks. The military does a pretty good job of making those. They're American made. I sent a bag of them to him because he was out in South Dakota and it was like so cold that they could only work 5 to 8 minutes at a time. And they would spend 50 minutes thawing out in a truck bed or in a truck cab. Then they go back and do the work in the night, moving drilling fluids, making sure that you can go to the gas pump and just fill up. Or that Tesla guy can fill up because all the fossil fuels are still running all of those tanks, right? So there are plenty of men that are willing to go out there and find the worst thing. There are women that are out there doing the thing that challenges women. But there's a lot of people that are very comfortable. So the idea of black jobs being very defensive is not the most despicable thing said. It turns out that this might be. Very good piece here coming out of Red State, written by Matt, I think his name is Funicello. So Matt, if you see this, correct me, feel free. The ultimate and most despicable lie President Joe Biden mumbled during the presidential debate. This actually did not get a lot of coverage. It did not go down as something. It was fact-checked. Yes, there were troops that were lost in action. But what he said is that June 27th will go down in history when every person watched the president of the United States get steamrolled on national television. The guy had a hard time getting through each lie without tripping on his words, half mumbling them, sounding like a man struggling to breathe. That's all true. But Biden had the blatant nerve to lie about not having any troops killed in action during his watch. This is the commentary part of it. He says, quote, he's so blinded by hate and disgust for Donald Trump, the possibility of losing the election, that he felt the need to try and hit Trump where it hurts. But he only succeeded in a few other things. One, he made himself out to be a bitter old man. with a horribly selective memory. But more importantly, he made himself look like the most immature and insensitive person. So for those of you who are combat veterans, you know, for those of you who have lost friends to suicide, who are in the military and also in law enforcement and also in public safety, we all know that sort of situation, right? We know that there are costs to doing that job, and they are not always obvious. And so how dare you brag about losing fewer people in combat like it's a statistic to be able to go out there and hold out. People in the military know that they are often used as political pawns. It's very, very similar. But to actually claim, number one, he claimed the Border Patrol backed him when that is not the case. The Border Patrol does not like it. And people in the military overwhelmingly are not going to back Joe Biden. He's created a situation where there is more danger in this world for those who are troops, and not for righteous causes because they were utterly avoidable. I think that when you enlist, I know when I enlisted, you look at what's in front of you and you say, I'm willing to endure death. That's the real possibility. And I did it at 27. So I was a grown up looking at my life as a possibility of not continuing because of my service. And it was like, okay, I'm on board for that. But that was not actually the scariest thing. And some of you in the chat actually know a little bit more about this. The question was, if I lose limb or quality of life, if I'm no longer able to live the life running around, jumping, doing all the physical capabilities that I have right now, am I still willing to do it? Am I willing to find myself paralyzed or without the use of a limb? Is that something that I'm willing to do? And when the answer is yes, because America believes that the cause is righteous, then young men will flock to it. But they do not have that belief right now. Overwhelmingly, what we keep seeing. Recruiting numbers are dropping. Veterans, parents of veterans, we're looking down and telling the next generation, no, this is not a country that you should serve at this point. My buddy Garrett O'Boyle has said it. If you could go back and do it all over again, would you do it all over again? For most of us, the answer is still yes. But if you had to do it all over again today, knowing what's going on today, would you in fact sign up? And the answer is no. And that is a big deal. And that makes that the nastiest and ugliest thing that he said. I think there's some real truth to that. Matt said that President Biden broke faith with us, the veterans, specifically combat veterans, so I'm not in that category. And he spoke something unspeakable in an attempt to basically bring Trump to his knees. It was an insult, and it made light of what happened at Abbey Gate, the 13 service members that died there during the bomb in the disastrous pullout in August of 2021. My parents still have a combat memorial up in their front yard to those service members. One member of the Army, one Navy corpsman, the rest were Marines, right? They were all their pictures and their stories are on a plaque outside of their house. There are 13 crosses that sit in their front yard and an American flag that's always lit. Some Americans haven't forgotten this. Most of you, if you think about it, that should be the legacy. And I hope Donald Trump continues to hammer that home. Not because it's a good point to dunk on Joe Biden, but because those families actually need it. Let's jump right here. Course correction. This is why they're not going to be able to replace him. Number one, there are 50 different ways that we choose and we run elections. I talked to Mike Howell at Heritage. We were discussing it over the weekend. Logistically, it is incredibly uphill. And actually, there's two things that need to happen. Number one, Republicans actually want Joe Biden to be standing for this debate because he's beatable. And number two, if they were to poll him, like I said, the tacit admission that he shouldn't even be president right now, that's very real. The second thing is that Heritage Foundation and others are getting ready to run all kinds of lawfare, and they will make sure that if you run someone other than Joe Biden in the places where he's been chosen as the right candidate, they will make it a write-in vote. It doesn't have to happen in every state. It has to happen in some states. And if you make a write-in candidate for the Democrats' nomination, even if they nominate him, if you make a write-in candidate show up, they will lose. They cannot win. You cannot cheat through a write-in candidate. That is an absolute failing proposition. They need it to go that way. So you're seeing two people that I think have a serious take on this. Number one is David Axelrod. He said any talk of replacing Biden is irrelevant. You heard Clyburn say it. I've got Nancy Pelosi saying it in a drunken way. You want to hear this? Here's Nancy Pelosi kind of like trying to get through her dentures saying this drunken piece. The people that are at the helm know that they can't swap him out because logistically the problems are going to be too big. Here's Nancy talking about it.
My people are very much Biden, Kamala Harris, and this is an opportunity for Joe Biden to go out there and show he has the stamina and the rest. And by the way, while the press, and for some reason they don't, there are healthcare professionals who think that Trump has dementia, that his connection, his thoughts do not go together. My people are.
Do you know who sounds demented? Is Nancy. Demented or drunk? Take your pick. How many days sober? 0 days sober. We could run one of those calendar things that shows like the no accidents. 0 days sober with Nancy Pelosi. She's slurring her words. She thinks Donald Trump is the one that's confused. That's pretty wild. But all of this kind of leads towards that same piece. They know they can't swap him out. Because think about this. Even if they agree that he shouldn't be running for president, then they probably are sort of agreeing that he shouldn't be president. And that means this person should be president. I'm only going to give you a few seconds of this, I promise you. But this person is the stand-in.
I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been. You know? What can be unburdened by what has been. 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 What we can see, what we believe can be unburdened by what has been. What
That goes on for 4 minutes, by the way. She says that all the time. What can be unburdened by what has been. Let me give you the alternative version of that. Past performance predicts future results. That's the reality. That's what real people think. That's what grown-ups know. That kindergarten, you can be anything you want to be, that sounds great in a marketing routine. It's terrible politics for grown-ups. She's unburdened by reality is what it comes down to. That's verbal fairy dust that she's sprinkling on people. So that's why she also couldn't even get the primary nomination in her own home state. That's why she couldn't poll more than 1% nationally. And why she is the vice president? Anybody's guess. She's an empty vessel. They can't run a Kamala Harris. She's actually liked less than Joe Biden, and she's young enough to not be that crappy at it. She's incredibly bad at that job. That is why. That's why I think they have to stick with Joe. Look, if we're wrong, we're wrong. I will be shocked, though. And if we're wrong, they're going to get pummeled because there are apparatus in place right now. They want to run against Joe. Joe's the guy that's made himself the problem. It's a great foil. The man who's the so-called convicted felon, which they tried to get out and they couldn't even get out in the debate, and the guy who went after him to make him that. That's a really good matchup. That's a really good matchup for America. It's a fact that when you look, Americans want to see underdogs. They want to see the guy that is fighting against an upstream. And that's the fight. All right. So let's pivot. We'll wrap this thing up with a little bit of pride and some of the other kind of kooky things as we go into July. This is supposed to be a month that we can celebrate America, and I think we can, but we might as well talk about what is the opposite of America, which is out there. This is not the opposite of America. Patriot Coolers, my friends over there, patriotcoolers.com, promo code KYLE. My mother knows about this cup, and she asked me about it last night, and she said, I want a cup just like yours, a green one with the upside down eagle on it. And I'm like, there's no eagle on this cup. There's the flag and they're all stickers. I don't know what she's talking about. You guys can get your own. You can get your own Patriot Cooler by going to patriotcoolers.com. Use that promo code Kyle to save yourself 10% at checkout. $50 or more, you'll get free shipping, and you can customize it. Just underneath add to cart, you can customize any of the cups, the tumblers. You can put it with your own visual on there, and you just need to go to stock images and thus suspendables, and you can grab 4 of our things, whether it be the Betsy Ross with the S, whether you want the badge, whether you want the rifle like you see there for the Last Line Substack. These are all Garrett's logos. We gave them to Patriot Coolers so you guys can have them. And if you're interested right now in getting something, I've been at the pool the last couple of days, and all my neighbors have igloos, apparently. They're on wheels. You want a superior product, check out patriotcoolers.com for their hard-sided coolers. Rotomolded, awesome, and they get it done. If you guys want the real deal, that's where you go. 10% off with my name. That's all you got to do. Okay, let's talk pride. You guys ready? It's so gross. I teased this earlier. Something about the MSNBC. This is their reporting. This is from their desk. There's a lady there who looks like she's Australian, but she's not. And it says, pride is universal. Well, that's actually true, isn't it? Yeah, it's universally a sin. It's universal to human beings. Here we go. Parties and protests mark the culmination of LGBTQ Pride Month in New York City and San Francisco and beyond. And then the most amazing part, because it has nothing to do with gay pride, I wouldn't think. This year, tensions over the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza are also seeping into the celebrations, exposing divisions within a community that is often aligned on political issues. Nope, I don't think it's actually showing division. I think what it's showing is the illogical premise that people who are gay have something in common with people who are bisexual, who have something in common with people who are transgender and don't know what to do and don't even agree on what's going on. You're right. I saw it in the chat. Here we go.
Già troppa frociaggine.
The frociaggine is strong. The alphabet mafia is ridiculous. They don't make any bit of sense. And this is how you end up with guys like Taylor Hansen from Tenet News covering down on the San Francisco Pride. It used to be a bunch of men dressed up like fairies and wearing little Speedos and walking around, and people just kind of avoided it. Now you've got parents out there taking their kids to it. In fact, there's a really, really telling 12-minute clip he's got on social media. So check out Taylor's stuff if you want to see the long version of it. Interviewing a mom, and Taylor fuzzed out the kids' faces and the mom's face. And she's like, he's like, there's a lot of naked, like fully naked grown men. Does that bother you? There's fully naked transsexuals. Does that bother you? And she was like, well, I mean, the kids were a little bit uncomfortable, but not enough for them not to go to the park. So she held them up and said, look, you're 5. Make a good decision. Would you like to see nude people and go to the park, or would you like to stay at home? And they were like, we really want to go to the park. We don't like the nude people, but we like the park more than seeing nude people. So we'll just try not to look at it, and we'll be scarred for life. That kind of nasty, horrific attitude that these like so-called liberal white women, Steve Friend and I say it all the time, liberal white women are the worst people in this country. And they are the worst because they are trying to destroy their kids. I want to show you this. The other worst thing is that the FBI decided to go all in. This is the ATF and the FBI. If you're listening to us, you're not going to be able to see what happens. So we'll cut it nice and short for this. But everyone else is going to see a government agency that kills people, the ATF, and another government agency that kills people, the FBI, telling you who they are. The most telling thing is that this is out of San Francisco. San Francisco is also the field office where all the Twitter files interference was observed. The Bronze Griffin, Operation Bronze Griffin, that censorship of Americans. What did you think they thought about you? If you had any questions, the FBI wants you to know they're gay. Here they are. If you're pushing your kids in a stroller, wearing a shirt of your government agency that has law enforcement abilities, and you're walking in a parade, that's not pride that you're feeling. That is universal embarrassment. And man, it just tells you who they are. These agencies should be disbanded. The upside is, and we didn't cover this because it happened over the weekend. It happened. I went on Tracy Bean's show right after we did ours on Friday. If you're not paying attention, we had some massive drops overturning the Chevron deference, which we've talked about on this program. And I recommend you guys go back and see 1984 was the original date where the government in the Supreme Court decided to side with the government. They said, this is the default position. The government is always right until they're proven not to be right. We now have that thrown out properly. And so maybe the original teeth, which were not a lot, in the Administrative Procedures Act have been undone. That is actually kind of amazing for us. On top of that, they've also thrown out, Fisher was victorious in his suit against the government, so they overturned and vacated the conviction in the 1512 C2 charge, which was the piece about obstruction of an official proceeding. This was the government essentially trying to use some Sarbanes-Oxley, accounting law that was put out in the wake of the Enron crisis or the Enron fail. What happened was they said, well, an official proceeding is kind of vague. Let's just use this novel interpretation, something that has never been used this way before. And for me, the overwhelming sense is there are two, it's a broad principle that we're seeing in this country, which is to say, the Supreme Court is pushing back against the government as God. Leftists would have you believe that your rights come from the government, that it is the reason why you're able to do the things you're able to do, that they allow it, and therefore you get rights from government. But instead, we know that our Constitution gives negative rights, which is to say that the government is not allowed to infringe on rights that you already have that pre-exist. So we are at least stepping into the realm where we have that natural suspicion. The Supreme Court is doing a decent job showing natural suspicion for government. That's what's supposed to happen. That's its job. It's not supposed to be a government cheerleader or a deep state cheerleader. Its purpose is to push back and say, hey, you've gone too far. I don't want to get done with this before we tell you two other really wild things that I saw on NBC News right now. So we're going to pass this on. Number one, the Taliban says you should look past how mean they are to Afghan women and girls and let them be a real country again. That's pretty amazing. It's positively covered here. They are very, very gentle. But again, we're talking about the Associated Press, so they sort of love terrorists, but they also sort of love women. They're that superhero sweating meme. They're not sure which button to push. Do we back the Taliban because they're a minority group that are Muslim, or do we go after the women and children who are abused and have had all kinds of bad outcomes by living there and sacrificed and killed off and all that? They're not really sure. Women aren't even allowed to go to the meeting that this was done at. It's really funny. If you guys want to read it long form, it's worth listening. But the Taliban, why are they a thing? They're a thing because of Joe Biden. They're a thing because even though the United States military had them completely under control and handled, and they were hanging out in the hills, they're back and they're running that country. And that should be another reminder of August 2021, yet another throwback that while we're having the Taliban on an international stage trying to get recognition, it's worth remembering the only reason they're in that position is because we had the election of 2020 and we had this disastrous bumbling fool come in who did not do a great job. And he didn't do a good job for the military. And he got people killed, and now this idiot is out there. This guy has a great name, by the way. The chief spokesperson for the Taliban's name is Zabihullah Mujahid. That's a good name. I should work on it so I can say it better. All right, I wanted to cover this because this is actually wild. There are two things that came out of this organization called The Conversation, and we're going to finish up with this. The Conversation bills themselves as academic rigor, journalistic flair. Number one, there's an article entitled "The U.S. Military Launched a Secret Anti-Vax Campaign in the Philippines, and Here's Why I'm Not Surprised." It was written, does it even say the author? The author's name is Caitlin Gainty, who's a senior lecturer of history, science, and technology at King's College in London, talking about how the U.S. government, and specifically the DOD, went after and claimed through a bunch of little slogans that China is the virus, and that the virus that the Chinese, had come out of Wuhan, that the problem exists in their vaccine as well, that they were the reason that the effectiveness of the vaccine is not there. And so there was a very low uptake. Only about a third of the population were interested in getting the vaccines that were created in China, which was called Sinovac, which you're seeing up there on the screen as well. Very interesting, isn't it? I just think the contrast there is quite strong. The U.S. government was pushing against the Chinese vaccine, whatever the heck it was, saying it was inefficient, pushing it out to the Middle East, saying that there was pork gelatin, which apparently it does not have, but they wanted people not to get that. So they wanted people to not get the shots in other countries, but they were willing to kick out me and Garrett O'Boyle and Steve Friend and countless others. Many of you lost your jobs because of the COVID vaccine in the United States. If you think that our government serves us, there's no evidence of this. The government does what the government does because individual isolated cells within the government are doing the thing that benefits them and their programs. And so the PSYOPs operation out of Florida that was doing this pushed it. Apparently, this is not the first time. They go into a little interesting history here. Like I said, this is a lecture of science and history talking about CIA-run operations trying to find bin Laden. They were trying to connect DNA, but they used the cover of hepatitis B vaccination campaigns, which made people suspicious all around in Pakistan. In these suburbs, they got nicer and nicer, the places where less and less people needed to be Hep B vaccinated. So it was pretty obvious. And then it resulted in, people getting killed off. There's always a backswing on these things. These first order level thinkings like, hey, let's pretend to be involved in this thing. What could be the worst thing that happened? The worst thing that happens is you send Doctors Without Borders, a bunch of women out there that want to actually give Hep B vaccines, and then they get beaten and killed and raped and so on. And that did happen. So there's a couple of things about that. Apparently the CIA actually swore off using vaccine administration as a cover program starting in 2014 because of all the negative pressure from health leaders who were saying, hey, by the way, we're sending people in and you're getting them hurt and or killed. Maybe not. Maybe not that. Very interesting that we were pushing against it. The second thing that came out was this other story along that lines, and it came out, and I saw it in the Conversation, but I covered it here from Canadian Broadcast Company and some others. Apparently, scientists have been able to isolate why some people never got COVID. You remember how they actually acted like this whole thing was like a virtue? Like if you didn't get COVID, it was because you did the right thing. It turns out a lot of it may have to do with just your genetic code, which is kind of what we thought, that it was probably targeted. They have actually isolated what they believe is like the most likely set of genes or individual genes that are overactive. And so they had 3 different groups of people. They're doing studies that would otherwise be like pushing the envelope when it comes to whether or not it's scrupulous or ethical. They are actually deliberately exposing people to COVID people who did not get the vaccines in order to see who does and who does not get sick. And that should tell you a lot about also like the type of people that didn't get it, who realized what the risk factors were. And they're finding out that there are basically three groups. Some people get very sick and they get sick for a while. It's a sustained infection. Some people have like one positive test and a little bit of a transient set of symptoms. And then some people don't get sick at all. And so they were very interested. Why do some people never get sick at all? Apparently they've been able to determine that and find the genes on this. If you guys want to read further on it, I just want to let you know that that's out there. And we're going to wrap up with the last little piece here, because today is July 1st and Steve Bannon will be reporting to prison in Danbury, Connecticut. This was one of the weirdest little articles coming from MSNBC, because not necessarily because of what they said. They just basically said it's his own fault. There are some things in here that I do want to call out real quickly. But the strangest thing to me was that this article was written by Steve Bannon talking about Steve Bannon. This writer for MSNBC on the Rachel Maddow blog, his name is Bennen, and he's covering down on his alter ego, Steve Bannon. Just kind of weird, right? The key point here that I think is most critical is that 24 months ago, 2 years ago this month, Bannon was convicted of his 2 counts of contempt of Congress. Obviously, we've seen Merrick Garland not held in contempt in a meaningful way. He was voted in contempt, but nobody's going to do anything. DOJ doesn't prosecute. DOJ did prosecute Steve Bannon 2 years ago. Another argument in favor of this weaponized government, the Banana Republic. And the fact of the matter is that Republicans didn't do anything to stop this. So he will be reporting to prison. He will be, I don't know if this was decided beforehand that he's going to be a good sacrificial lamb, that they're going to throw him out there and be able to talk about it for 4 months, or if they just screwed up. And more often than not, as Steve Friend and I always talk about, this demolition derby attitude versus lining up the shot so perfectly that they end up missing the shot altogether, it's very problematic. Republicans should have done something about this. They had the responsibility to do something about this, and they let him basically be out there on his own. That is something that every FBI whistleblower has the same sense of. That is what the IRS whistleblowers have the sense of. The government's not coming to help us, and many of you know that as well. The government's not coming to save us. Dangerous, sad, stupid times to be alive. I do have a good little palate cleanser for you. It comes directly from the debate, and it's going to be a visual thing, but even the audio is actually quite funny. Before we do that, let's do a 5-star review. What does Steve Friend say? He wants dessert before dinner, so I'll give you dinner first. Kind of exciting news. Over the weekend, you guys were able to do it. You pushed the algorithm to the point where it could no longer handle it. We have crossed the 1,000. We are at 1,000 5-star reviews because of your great work. And I really, really appreciate you guys doing so. So a short one from Golf Gig. You'll see why that's going to be relevant in a second. Great show, 5 stars. Love the show. Appreciate your insights. And more importantly, or most importantly, your honesty. Thanks. Golf Gig, we appreciate you. Leave your own 5-star review on Apple. Let's keep it above 1,000 because I know they're going to try to take it back. And if we can do it, we will continue to hold that ground. It's good stuff. We'll read it here on the show when we get it. All right, are you guys ready for a little palate cleanse? A little bit of a taste of something funny. These are 2 brothers who look the same. They have mustaches. They're very young. I'm describing it for our audio listeners. And they are reenacting the Biden-Trump golf debate, which was the most important part of the debate for some people. It was certainly the funniest for me. And they do an awesome job. Even the lean in, lean out thing when the microphone is off, it's perfect. So enjoy this little thing. It'll make you smile.
I'm in very good health. I just won 2 club championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way. And I do it. He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. I think I'm in very good shape. I feel that I'm as in good a shape as I was 25, 30 years ago. Actually, I'm probably a little bit lighter.
Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. The reason I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. But by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag. Think you can do it?
That's the biggest lie. He's a 6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8.
Never.
But I have, you know how many?
I've seen you swing. I know you swing. Hey, let's not act like children.
President Trump, we're going to turn
Let's not act like children.
to a specific concern.
The best is when he says, let's not act like children, because he baits him into it. And he's like, you are a child. Ugh. God, Joe's so bad at this. They're stuck with him. I'm on record. That's what I think. And you, thank you so much. We saw your $100 Rumble rant for family. I hope you guys are spending some time with your family this week. Make sure you're getting your kids geared up. I'm trying to keep my kids behaved so they can really enjoy and stay up late on 4th of July. It's always been a big thing where things explode in the sky. That is so American. Just bombs bursting in air. Remember what it's all about. We're going to talk about that a little bit more as the week goes on, but we really thank you guys for joining us this morning. Thanks for sharing the show. Thanks for getting our numbers where they needed to be. And I'm telling you, overcoming that Apple piece, big deal. Very much grateful for it. Folks, we'll see you again tomorrow on Tuesday. And if you want to see a little bit more, check me out. I'll be with Jonathan Cho, independent journalist. We're going to be on the Dinesh D'Souza podcast this afternoon. So we'll see you there. If you guys want to do it on Rumble, it'll be on YouTube and all the other places, audio as well. See you then. God bless you. See you in the morning.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Seraphin.